In Do the Hard Things First, Stephen Munoz delivers a simple but powerful principle. Real progress begins when you face your toughest tasks before anything else. Success is not built on fleeting motivation, but on prioritization, consistent habits, and an environment designed to make procrastination harder than action. This short yet direct introduction is a call to action. Choose today's hardest task, start with it now, and watch the impossible turn into a routine that produces lasting results. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Avoidance. Every morning, your mind instantly sorts the tasks you have ahead. Without conscious awareness, it gravitates toward what is easiest, most familiar, and least threatening. This is not laziness, but biology. The human brain is wired to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary discomfort, and to keep you safe from perceived threats. Difficult tasks, especially those that involve uncertainty, delayed gratification, or potential failure, trigger resistance. We convince ourselves that these tasks can wait until later, that there will be a better time when we feel ready. The problem is that later rarely comes, and readiness is an illusion. What grows instead is stress, guilt, and a slow erosion of confidence. When you delay what matters most, the task does not vanish. It expands in weight and intensity. You spend more energy avoiding it than you would completing it. Stephen Munoz frames this as a silent tax on your life. Every avoided task costs you twice, once in the mental load of carrying it unfinished, and once again in the lost progress it could have created. The first key to freedom is recognizing this trap. Avoidance is not a harmless habit, it is a hidden decision to trade long-term achievement for short-term comfort. Facing the hard thing first is not about discipline for its own sake, but about liberating yourself from the mental drag of procrastination. When you start with what you fear or resist, you reclaim authority over your day instead of surrendering it to chance. This shift requires you to see avoidance not as a personality flaw, but as a predictable response to discomfort that can be interrupted with awareness. Once you recognize the pattern, you can disrupt it. You can look at the task you dread and remind yourself that doing it now means immediate relief, restored confidence, and momentum for everything that follows. Chapter 2. The Power of Sequencing. The order in which you do things matters as much as the tasks themselves. Productivity is not simply about working harder or longer. It is about arranging your energy and focus in the right sequence. Starting with the easiest tasks may give you a false sense of accomplishment, but it drains time and mental clarity from the very things that could change your future. Munoz emphasizes that your willpower is strongest in the first hours of your day. If you waste those precious hours on emails, minor errands, or low-value activities, you are spending the sharpest edge of your mind on what matters least. Reordering your sequence is not complicated, but it does require courage. It means placing the hardest and most meaningful task at the front of your day when energy is high and distractions are minimal. This sequencing strategy creates a psychological effect. Once you finish the difficult task, your sense of achievement multiplies, fueling motivation to handle everything else. By contrast, when you leave the hard task for last, your entire day feels overshadowed by it. It sits in the background like a weight, dulling your focus and stealing your peace. The secret of sequencing is that it transforms discipline into momentum. Instead of forcing yourself through the day with willpower alone, you are carried forward by the satisfaction of having conquered the hardest thing first. This is why high achievers in every field guard their mornings fiercely and design them around their most important work. Sequence is not a detail. It is the architecture of success. Chapter 3. Building Emotional Resilience. Doing the hard things first is not only a productivity strategy, it is an emotional training ground. Each time you confront a difficult task head-on, you build resilience. You prove to yourself that discomfort is survivable, that fear is not fatal, and that action weakens anxiety. Munoz explains that much of our resistance comes from imagined pain. We picture rejection, failure, or exhaustion, and those images paralyze us. Yet when we act, we often find the task less painful than our anticipation of it. This is the resilience gap, the difference between what you fear and what is real. By repeatedly stepping into that gap, you train your mind to shrink it. Over time, your tolerance for discomfort expands. What once felt intimidating becomes routine. This shift is profound because it rewires how you experience challenge. Instead of seeing hard tasks as threats, you begin to see them as opportunities to grow stronger. Emotional resilience also creates spillover benefits. It makes you calmer in crises, more confident in decision-making, and less reactive to stress. People who avoid difficulty live in a constant state of low-level anxiety. People who face it daily develop a quiet confidence. They know they can handle more than they once believed. This inner toughness becomes a competitive advantage in every area of life, from career to relationships. Doing the hard things first is like lifting weights for your emotional muscles. Each repetition strengthens you, and each challenge faced enlarges your capacity for the next. Chapter 4. Systems over motivation. Many people fail not because they lack desire, but because they rely too heavily on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood, weather, and circumstances. If your ability to face hard tasks depends on feeling motivated, you will fail more often than you succeed. Munoz insists that systems are superior. A system is a structure that makes the desired action automatic. Instead of deciding every morning whether you feel like doing the hard thing, you create a ritual that eliminates the choice. For example, if writing is your hardest but most important task, your system might be sitting at your desk at 7 a.m. with your phone off and coffee ready. If exercising is your priority, your system might be laying out clothes the night before and meeting a partner who expects you. The point is to engineer conditions where avoidance becomes harder than action. Systems shift responsibility from your mood to your environment. They reduce friction, remove decision fatigue, and build momentum. When you depend on motivation, you fight an inner battle every day. When you depend on systems, the battle is won before it begins. This is why successful people are often described as disciplined, when in fact they are systematic. They do not wake up more motivated than anyone else. They simply arrange their lives so that important actions happen with minimal resistance. Doing the hard things first becomes less about heroism and more about habit. Chapter 5. The compound effect of consistency. One day of doing the hard thing first will not transform your life, but the repetition of that choice will. Munoz explains that consistency compounds. Each time you prioritize the difficult over the convenient, you add another layer to your foundation of discipline and confidence. These small acts accumulate into massive outcomes. A single workout will not change your body, but a year of workouts will. Writing for one morning will not produce a book, but writing daily will. The compound effect is often underestimated because results do not appear immediately. The early days feel unrewarding and many quit before the payoff arrives. But if you persist, the curve eventually bends upward and the gains become exponential. Consistency also multiplies because it simplifies decision-making. Once you have established a habit of tackling the hardest task first, you no longer debate or delay. You simply execute. That rhythm frees mental bandwidth for creativity and problem-solving. It also signals to yourself and to others that you are reliable, capable, and unstoppable. The true reward of consistency is not only external achievement, but also internal transformation. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who does not flinch at difficulty. This identity shift is permanent and empowering. Over time, the hard things become less about willpower and more about who you are. The person you become by consistently choosing difficulty first is far stronger, freer, and more capable than the person who avoids it. That is the promise of doing the hard things first. Chapter 6. Energy as a strategic resource. Energy is not infinite, and yet most people act as if it will be available whenever they need it. The truth is that your energy is your most precious resource, and the way you spend it determines the quality of your life. Munoz emphasizes that doing the hard things first is not just about time management, but energy management. Your mind is sharpest and most resilient in the early hours of the day, before distractions multiply and decision fatigue sets in. If you dedicate that peak energy to trivial tasks, you are misallocating your greatest asset. Think of energy like capital in a business. If you invest it in low-return projects, you cannot expect significant growth. But if you channel it into high-value, high-impact actions, the returns compound quickly. Protecting your energy requires intention. This may mean saying no to unnecessary commitments, reducing exposure to constant notifications, or designing your morning as a sacred block of time for the work that matters most. It also means respecting your body. Nutrition, sleep, and exercise are not luxuries, but multipliers of energy. Without them, your productivity strategies collapse. Chapter 7. The courage to confront fear. Fear is the silent architect of procrastination. Beneath excuses and distractions, fear often sits at the root of delay. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of exposure, all of these create the urge to postpone. Munoz argues that the only way to neutralize fear is not avoidance, but confrontation. Doing the hard things first is essentially a practice in courage. Each time you step into the task you fear, you diminish its power over you. Fear is a projection of possible pain, not pain itself. By acting, you collapse the distance between imagination and reality, often finding that the reality is far less severe than your mind suggested. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Repeated courageous action rewires your relationship with fear. Instead of a wall that stops you, fear becomes a signal pointing toward growth. The very things you resist most often hold the breakthroughs you need. Munoz explains that behind fear is usually opportunity. The deal you are scared to pitch, the conversation you hesitate to have, the challenge you avoid. These are often the exact steps that would transform your results. Courage does not come all at once. It builds incrementally. Each hard thing done first is a brick laid in the foundation of fearlessness. Over time, you stop waiting to feel brave and begin to act as if you already are, discovering that bravery grows in the doing. Chapter 8. Focus in a distracted world. The modern world is designed to fragment attention. Every notification, every headline, every demand for your time is a pull away from focus. Yet the hard things require deep concentration. They cannot be accomplished in scattered fragments of attention. Munoz stresses that the ability to focus is now a competitive advantage. Doing the hard things first demands carving out distraction-free zones where you can immerse fully in the task. This begins with boundaries. Turn off notifications, set clear times for email, and create physical spaces that signal focus. But focus is more than just removing distractions. It is training your mind to sustain attention even when it wants to wander. Just as a muscle strengthens with repeated use, focus expands with deliberate practice. Start with small blocks of deep work and gradually lengthen them. The reward of focus is not only productivity but fulfillment. When you are deeply engaged in meaningful work, you experience flow, a state where time disappears and effort feels effortless. This is the exact opposite of the scattered frustration that comes from multitasking. The modern environment rewards distraction, but your future rewards focus. Doing the hard things first is a declaration that you will not let the noise of the world steal the clarity of your mind. Chapter 9. Redefining success. One reason people avoid hard tasks is that they are chasing the wrong definition of success. Success is often framed as ease, comfort, or the absence of struggle. But Munoz challenges this idea. True success, he argues, is not freedom from difficulty, but mastery through it. The people you admire most did not build their lives by avoiding hard things. They built them by confronting and mastering them. Redefining success means shifting from a comfort-based metric to a growth-based metric. Instead of asking, "How easy is my life?" you ask, "How strong am I becoming?" Instead of measuring how little discomfort you face, you measure how much purpose-driven difficulty you embrace. This shift transforms the meaning of effort. Struggle becomes a signal of significance, not a sign of failure. Doing the hard things first becomes a daily practice of aligning with this new definition of success. Every difficult task completed is not just a check mark, but a declaration of who you are becoming. Over time, this identity-based success is far more stable than achievement based on external markers. Money, recognition, and status may fluctuate, but the confidence built through daily discipline is permanent. Redefining success in this way liberates you from chasing shortcuts and teaches you to find fulfillment in the very act of doing the work that others avoid. Chapter 10. The ripple effect of example. The decision to do the hard things first is not a private matter. It ripples outward into your relationships, your workplace, and your community. When you consistently prioritize difficult but meaningful tasks, you set a visible example that others notice. People are inspired by action more than words. Colleagues, friends, and family who see you consistently face challenges will begin to believe more deeply in their own ability to do the same. Munoz describes this as the ripple effect of example. It creates cultures of discipline and resilience. In workplaces, it fosters teams that tackle high-value problems instead of avoiding them. In families, it teaches children that perseverance and courage are normal, not extraordinary. The ripple effect also enhances your credibility. People trust those who walk their talk. When you lead by example, opportunities open because others see you as reliable and courageous. The opposite is also true. When you habitually avoid the hard things, you unintentionally teach others to do the same. Your actions normalize avoidance and fear. Recognizing the ripple effect adds another layer of motivation. You are not only shaping your life, but influencing the lives around you. Doing the hard things first becomes a contribution to a culture of courage. Over time, this impact is one of the greatest rewards. You discover that your discipline does not just change you, it changes the environment you touch. Chapter 11. Mastering the art of prioritization. Not all hard things are created equal. Some are crucial, while others are simply difficult without being meaningful. Munoz stresses that prioritization is the compass that ensures you put your energy into the right battles. Doing the hard things first does not mean doing every hard thing indiscriminately. It means identifying the most important challenge that moves your life forward and starting there. Many people confuse being busy with being productive. They fill their days with endless activity, yet make little progress toward their true goals. The key is to distinguish between urgent distractions and vital priorities. Urgent tasks scream for attention, but often have little long-term impact. Vital tasks are quieter, but they shape your future. Mastering prioritization requires honesty. You must ask, if I could only do one thing today, which task would make the biggest difference? That is the task to do first. This habit prevents you from hiding behind easy busyness and forces you to confront the real work that matters. Over time, prioritization sharpens your judgment. You stop scattering your effort across dozens of trivial pursuits and begin channeling it into the few areas that truly define your success. Chapter 12. The discipline of saying no. Every yes is also a no. When you agree to one demand, you inevitably close the door to another opportunity. Munoz explains that doing the hard things first often requires the discipline to say no more frequently than yes. Most people struggle with this because they fear disappointing others, missing out, or being seen as selfish, but saying yes too freely dilutes your time, energy, and focus until nothing of importance gets done. Discipline is not only about what you choose to do, but what you refuse to do. By saying no to low-value requests, you are saying yes to the high-value priorities that demand your full attention. This is not selfishness, it is clarity. People who achieve extraordinary results are ruthless in protecting their focus. They decline distractions with grace, but with firmness. Each no reinforces your boundaries, preserves your energy, and creates space for the hard tasks that matter. Without this discipline, your day will be consumed by other people's priorities rather than your own. The art of saying no is not about closing doors forever, but about keeping your most important doors open today. Chapter 13. Momentum through small wins. Large challenges can feel overwhelming, and the temptation to delay them grows with their perceived difficulty. Munoz reveals a powerful antidote. Break the hard task into smaller, winnable steps. Momentum is created through action, not contemplation. When you secure even a small victory, you trigger motivation and reduce resistance. This principle does not diminish the importance of tackling big goals, but makes them psychologically manageable. Writing a book may feel impossible, but writing a single page today is not. Running a marathon may seem unreachable, but running 1 mile now is within reach. These small wins create momentum, and momentum multiplies. Once in motion, it is easier to keep moving than to stop and restart. Munoz explains that progress, even in tiny increments, builds confidence. Confidence feeds consistency, and consistency delivers results. This approach does not excuse you from facing the hard things, but equips you with a method to chip away at them until they no longer feel insurmountable. Chapter 14. The role of accountability. Left to yourself, it is easy to rationalize delay, minimize the importance of hard tasks, or quietly break commitments. Accountability is the structure that keeps you honest when motivation wanes. Munoz emphasizes that accountability can take many forms: a trusted friend, a coach, a mastermind group, or even public declarations of your goals. The point is to create an external layer of expectation that reinforces your internal intentions. Accountability does not remove responsibility, it amplifies it. When someone else knows what you have committed to, the pressure to follow through increases. The fear of embarrassment or disappointment becomes fuel for consistency. Accountability also provides encouragement and perspective. Others can see progress you overlook and can challenge excuses you invent. Over time, this external support becomes a mirror reflecting your true commitment. Doing the hard things first is still your choice, but accountability ensures that choice is made consistently rather than occasionally. It transforms personal discipline into shared discipline, and that added weight can be the difference between quitting and persisting. Chapter 15. Designing your environment. Your environment shapes your behavior more than sheer willpower. Munoz insists that people overestimate self-control and underestimate surroundings. If your environment is filled with distractions, temptations, and clutter, even the strongest intention will collapse under pressure. The solution is to design your environment to pull you toward the hard tasks instead of away from them. This may mean removing your phone from your workspace, arranging your desk the night before, or using apps that block distracting websites. It may also mean surrounding yourself with people who embody discipline and ambition, since behavior is contagious. A well-designed environment reduces resistance by default. Instead of fighting constant temptation, you create a space where the right action is the easiest action. This principle extends beyond physical space to digital and social environments. Curate the influences you consume, limit exposure to negativity, and expand exposure to knowledge and examples that push you higher. When your environment aligns with your goals, doing the hard things first feels natural rather than forced. Chapter 16. Mastery through repetition. Repetition is the mother of mastery. Hard things do not become easier simply because you wish them to. They become easier because you repeatedly do them until they are familiar. Munoz explains that consistency turns difficulty into habit. At first, the resistance is intense. Each repetition feels like a battle. But as you persist, the effort decreases, the routine stabilizes, and the once intimidating task becomes second nature. This is how athletes, musicians, and professionals achieve excellence, not by avoiding hard practice, but by embracing it repeatedly. The key is to recognize that repetition is not punishment, but training. Every repetition strengthens neural pathways, builds skill, and reduces hesitation. Over time, mastery emerges not from extraordinary effort, but from ordinary effort repeated consistently. Doing the hard things first is less about conquering massive obstacles once and more about confronting meaningful challenges daily until they lose their power. Mastery is simply the byproduct of stubborn repetition. Chapter 17. Resisting the seduction of comfort. Comfort is appealing, but it is also dangerous. Munoz warns that comfort seduces people into stagnation. The more you seek comfort, the less capacity you build for challenge. This is why growth often feels uncomfortable. It requires stretching beyond your familiar limits. Comfort whispers that you have done enough, that you deserve a break, that tomorrow will be a better time. These whispers kill momentum and quietly erode ambition. The irony is that the pursuit of constant comfort creates long-term discomfort, regret, lost opportunity, and diminished potential. The antidote is deliberate discomfort. By choosing to do the hard things first, you inoculate yourself against the trap of comfort. You train your body and mind to accept challenge as normal rather than avoid it. The more you resist the seduction of comfort, the more capable and resilient you become. In time, your sense of satisfaction comes not from ease, but from achievement. Chapter 18. The freedom of discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but Munoz reframes it as freedom. When you live without discipline, you are enslaved by impulses, distractions, and unfinished tasks. When you cultivate discipline, you gain control of your time, energy, and destiny. Doing the hard things first is the ultimate act of discipline. It creates a rhythm of life where progress is consistent, stress is reduced, and self-respect is high. Discipline is not rigid perfection, but repeated alignment with your priorities. Each disciplined choice frees you from chaos, procrastination, and regret. Over time, discipline compounds into freedom, financial freedom, emotional freedom, and freedom of choice. The paradox is that by binding yourself to the structure of discipline, you unlock a life far freer than the life of indulgence and avoidance. Munoz concludes that discipline is not punishment, but the highest form of self-respect. When you do the hard things first, you are proving daily that you value your future more than your fleeting comfort. Chapter 19. Building resilience. Through struggle. Resilience is not built in comfort, but in the furnace of struggle. Munoz argues that every hard thing you face is not only a test of ability, but a training ground for resilience. Life will inevitably bring setbacks, failures, and obstacles. The question is not whether hardship will come, but whether you will be strong enough to endure and continue. By choosing to do the hard things first, you simulate hardship daily in a controlled form. Each time you willingly lean into difficulty, you train your mind and body to tolerate discomfort and persist under pressure. Over time, this practice creates a resilience muscle that grows stronger with every challenge. Resilience is not the absence of pain, but the ability to keep moving despite it. When you adopt this mindset, setbacks stop being permanent roadblocks and instead become temporary detours. Munoz explains that resilience also sharpens perspective. Hardships that once seemed unbearable begin to feel manageable because you have endured them before. This creates a sense of unshakable confidence. No matter what comes, you can handle it. By embracing daily struggles, you prepare yourself for the unpredictable storms of life. Instead of being crushed by adversity, you are tempered by it like steel strengthened in fire. In this way, resilience is not something you are born with, but something you cultivate through repeated exposure to difficulty. Doing the hard things first ensures you are always training this vital capacity, long before life forces you to. Chapter 20. Living a life of impact. The ultimate purpose of doing the hard things first is not productivity for its own sake, but impact. Munoz closes by reminding us that a life of avoidance is a life of regret, while a life of discipline is a life of contribution. When you prioritize meaningful struggle over easy comfort, you build achievements that outlast you. Impact is created when your actions ripple into the lives of others, inspiring them, helping them, or changing the trajectory of their own journey. Doing the hard things first is not just about career success or personal growth, but about becoming someone whose life matters. Every time you resist procrastination and embrace discipline, you expand your capacity to lead, to create, and to influence. The rewards are deeper than material gains. They are found in knowing that you lived with intention, that you chose courage over fear, that you consistently gave your best effort when it mattered most. Munoz insists that the legacy of such a life is not measured by possessions but by people, the ones you helped, the ones you inspired, and the ones you empowered. A life of impact begins each day when you look at the hardest task before you and choose to do it first. But this choice, repeated daily, compounds into a story of strength, resilience, and meaning. The measure of a life is not how easy it was, but how many lives it touched. Doing the hard things first is the path to a legacy that endures long after the tasks themselves are forgotten. Conclusion. Thank you for listening to this summary of Do the Hard Things First by Stephen Munoz. If you enjoyed this audiobook experience and want to discover more powerful book summaries, make sure to subscribe to our channel, the Audiobook Library, where knowledge is always just one listen away.